listen, we all have good days, we all have bad days, and again, I have to look at some of the calls. I know some of them were not in our favor, I can tell you that. We do have to do a better job, and they probably have to do a better job too. So again, overall, I don't blame them. It always comes back to us, and if you give a guy like Kucherov 10 minutes on the power play, you know, he did something wrong. So that's on us.
Okay, Marco Sturm, a little bit more diplomatic than I would have been. I guess he's learned to keep his emotions in check. Evan Marinofsky joining us right now on the Hockey Hub, editor of the New England Hockey Journal and host of the Bruins Beat podcast. Evan, Adam, and I just talked about our overall thoughts. Pick any of the topics you want. Goalie fight, blowing a 5-1 lead, officiating. What did you make of the game last night with the Lightning?
There was so much, Sophia. You're 100% right. Like, you can start wherever. I think one of the parts that's a shame is because they blew that 5-1 lead and the penalties, that's the story. Whereas when that goalie fight happened, it was like, oh man, like, you've got a goalie fight. You're killing the top team in the Atlantic. Like, this is a huge step for this team. And I think that's one of the real disappointing parts for the Bruins. And that, like, not to say that goes to waste. Like, I think we'll always remember the Jeremy Swayman fight and we'll remember the game itself, but you do miss out on it a little bit. And I think, you know, their Achilles heel this year has been penalties, and they took a lot of penalties last night. I think that's why they lost that game. I think you see that the 5-on-3, and Marco Sturm's 100% right. You take a lot of penalties against Nikita Kucherov, that he's going to make you pay. They're going to make you pay, and they did. And I think that's one of the most disappointing parts for them. You get a point out of it. Like, that's not nothing. You get a point, but you're up 5-1. You have all these momentum type things. Jeremy Swayman's fight. Matt Patra scores a goal. Everyone across the lineup is contributing. And it's, I don't want to say it's thrown away, but it's diminished because you blew a 4-goal lead. So that to me is the big story from Sunday night, is that just really cool moments like that and momentum swinging moments for a season kind of get put to the side.
What did you make of the overtime call? Or, you know, it was just so bizarre, you know, because Pasta was talking about it after the game. He's like, I never seen anything like that before. I don't think any of us watching ever seen anything like that before. I mean, the ref has his hand up, you know, the Bruins have possession. Swayman's skating off the ice. They score. And then all of a sudden it's like, what? What did you make of that whole sequence?
What's so interesting is you see on the highlight playing, like, Kucherov also stops playing. And I think he thought the Bruins took a penalty, and that's why you kind of see him put his arms up. What's interesting is, like, the penalty itself, that slash by Pastrnak, that happens so often. We did a live stream last night after the game, and a lot of people were getting on the officials for not calling anything on the Lightning, and I do think there were some missed calls. I also blame the Bruins because they take a lot of penalties, and they did it again on Sunday night. I didn't think that was a penalty. And at that point in the game, I don't know why you're calling that. That's my thing. I hate complaining about officials because I think it's like, you know, there is responsibility on the team itself to not take those penalties. I had no problem with that. And then, yeah, I mean, you see the ref put his arm up, but I don't know if the stadium was too loud, because you can kind of hear whistles on the broadcast as they're skating up the ice. But I'm guessing that it was so loud in there in overtime with 60,000 people that Pastrnak and the team couldn't hear it. And you hear the ref blow the whistle a couple of times, but it's sort of muted. It was an odd sequence. It was a really odd sequence. And I don't know why that's called. That did not make a lot of sense to me. Because you guys watch a lot of hockey too. That happens all the time. Slash a guy on the hands a little bit. He still got the pass off. It's not like he negated, you know, a complete scoring chance. So
I've also seen that call too, Evan, and that's the problem, is the inconsistency of the calls, right? Because sometimes you don't see that call, but I mean, I've seen calls like that this year, or slash like that. The problem with it is the fact that it's a situational thing, right? You're in overtime in this incredible game, and you make that call on the Bruins star player, and then you have that whole thing happen where, you know, they score on the other end, and there's, you can't hear the whistle if it was blown or not, right? So it was just so bizarre.
Yeah,
the not hearing of the whistle is. Oh, sorry, Evan. Just really quick, the not hearing of the whistle is the best explanation I've heard, and I hope that that's it. Because if he blew it right when Husnudinov had it, like, great, but like it was full 20 seconds before the play stopped. But go on.
Well, that's the thing. It goes in line with the storyline of the whole night. Tampa has no penalties called against them. So it's very easy to be like, oh, that's interesting. Wonder how that happened. And it's easy for fans to make those assumptions, and I get it. And that goes in line with it. I think if officiating hadn't been a problem all night and the Bruins had 3 penalties and the Lightning had 2 or whatever, that happens. And it's like, oh, that's a weird situation. I don't know why that happened. But to have it be the night that it was with officiating, and then you have the comments after the game too, it fits in a little too perfectly. But again, the Bruins did it to themselves, I thought, throughout the regulation part of that game, especially in that second period with those penalties. I mean, Kastelik's penalty, that's what are you doing on that? And there were some others too. That it's just a lack of discipline at times. And you can argue there should have been a third man in on a few of those, especially on Kastelik's with like Jake Gensel, and I would understand it. But they have to figure out before the playoffs start, because they are a playoff team now. They have to figure out now how to reel it in, how to hit that line, but not go over it, not take too many penalties, not whether it's, holds and roughs or trips and hooks. Like they have to find a way to sort of have that P and V, as they say, but don't take penalties for it.
Yeah, I mean, and that at the end of the day was Marco Sturm's answer. What he said, we did it to ourselves earlier on in the game, and like, yes, true. We don't need to talk about this anymore because like it's kind of leading me on to another question I want to ask you. But still, I feel like yes, the Bruins need more discipline, but damn, some of these calls are questionable. Anyway, with that though, you said now they're a playoff team. Obviously, it's not just an NHL spectacle with the outdoor game, but it was important. Atlantic Division rival with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they get the 1 point. They're going on after this game against the Panthers coming up on Wednesday. They're going on a 2.5 week Olympic break, as is the rest of the league. Are you concerned at all for teams that are finally getting their momentum, like the Bruins? Like, excellent month of January ever since that win against the Edmonton Oilers on New Year's Eve. Are you concerned that this could be a momentum killer? It's like there's nothing they could do about it. The rest is going to be important for those not playing, but does that bother you at all?
It's funny because like they don't have a lot of injuries. If they had a bunch of injuries, and obviously guys are bumped up as every team deals with right now, so you get a little bit of rest there. But it's not like they have all these injuries where it's like, oh, Morgan Geekie's going to be back when they come back from the break, and
Right.
Charlie McAvoy is going to be back. Like it's none of that, and a lot of your guys are going to be at the Olympics too, so they're not going to get a ton of rest. Guy like Charlie McAvoy, David Pastrnak, not going to have a ton of rest. I don't think it kills their momentum. I think we've seen them be streaky all year, and for the last month, they've just been dynamite. So they've avoided sort of the streakiness. I think it's just sort of getting in that rhythm of winning 2, you lose 1, winning 2. I think that's sort of their thing, is just getting into a rhythm. Obviously, I don't think anybody expects them to do what they've done for the past month right when they come back, but just being consistently in it. I think when you look at the Eastern Conference, they're 7 points ahead of the next team. Them and Montreal are in the wild card spot, but like Montreal is still like 6 or 7 points ahead of that next team, Columbus, Washington. So you have a pretty good cushion being in the playoffs. It just comes down to, are you going to be a wild card team or third in the Atlantic? They obviously have to hold that. But no, I don't think this kills their momentum. I just don't think it's super helpful. If they'd lost 5 of 6 going into the Olympic break, we could be like, oh, they needed this. They needed this. They don't really need this. They don't really need this, but I don't think it kills all of their momentum.
Yeah, and I look at the schedule, and I know they're in a playoff spot right now. We were talking a little bit about this during the Flyers game. They've played 30 home games already, and the sparkling record at home for the Bruins. At the end of that game, it was the best in the National Hockey League because the Colorado Avalanche were on the road in Montreal. They'll have, right now, including the game in Florida, they got 15 road games left. And they got a bear of a schedule in March, like everybody does. They got 16 games in the month of March, which is just crazy to think about. So it's going to be an absolute sprint for them. They got to figure out ways to win on the road. And that was the question I asked Sean Corrali in the room the other day. I was like, hey, can you pinpoint anything to, in terms of the key to your success at home? And he said, well, we really like playing here, obviously, but the big thing is we have to find a way to win on the road like we're winning at home, because they haven't done that. They're below 500 on the road. They haven't been above 500 since they won the opener over the Capitals. So that's another thing they have to figure out if they want to stay in that playoff spot.
Yeah. And that's the thing is they've struggled with this on the road, and it's funny, Adam, because they have been so good at home, and that's sort of balanced it out. They're likely not going to have home ice if they make the playoffs, so you do have to find a way to win on the road, and I think it comes down to their discipline. It comes down to they're scoring way above where they're supposed to. The advanced analytics for them, expected goals for, is way higher than it should than normally would be. So for them, I do think it's all those things. I think it's continuing to get great goaltending too. They've lucked out. I mean, Swayman obviously lets in 6, including the shootout on Sunday, but he was still awesome. I thought outside of those penalties, he was dynamite, especially for them down the stretch. And Korpisalo's been much better of late. So I think if you have that, you continue to get secondary scoring. You have your 2 goalies playing well down the stretch, so Swayman can be a little bit more rested, and you get better discipline wise. I think you're probably going to be better on the road, no question, here down the stretch.
I'm going to die on the hill that we have no idea what any NHL team is going to look like until the Olympics and the trade deadline is done, because we have no idea what's going to happen injury wise, and knock on wood. And it could have, all of these guys that are on Olympic rosters are superstars to some degree if they've made an Olympic roster to their teams. So we'll see. And then there's the trade deadline of like what moves are going to be made if you do need to make up for injury. So I feel like there's so much to remain that is like unknown. But if we're sticking with the known, he's not going to the Olympics. He's a young Bruins, no longer a prospect. He's named Rookie of the Month in the NHL. And much to the demise of Leafs fans everywhere, another trade with the Leafs that goes the Bruins' way. Fraser Minten, how pleased are you to see his development and what it's been, as we, by the way, take a look at a tweet from the Bruins. Mintz had a month. Congrats, Fraser Minten, on being the NHL Rookie of the Month for January. So by the way, I know you've talked to him a lot. He's a wonderful kid, and I love that it's translating to NHL talent.
Yeah, Minten has been a revelation. I think when he first came in, it was like, all right, he's sort of in the Charlie Coyle mold. You hope that he's that someday. And it's like, hell yeah, no problem with that. Like, that's a good, solid, reliable player. You win with those kinds of guys. But at his age, to come in and do what he's been able to do, in his first full season. And I think that's another thing that when we look back on this Bruins season in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, we're most likely going to look back and say this was the year when guys like Minten and Houston Dinoff and some of these younger players got a lot of experience and proved themselves. And I think for Minten, he's at the top of that. Like, when you look back at this year, like, oh yeah, that's the year Fraser Minten proved that he could potentially be a really good 2C someday, a really good top 6 center for you. And we don't know. Things can change over time. But he just plays the game so well. I know it's not cliche to say he plays the right way. Great 2-way forward. Has an offensive touch. That was always the question with him, is like, is that offense ever going to be there? And you saw it in January, how dominant he was. And by the way, he's doing this a lot of times on the third line. He's not like, it's not like they're putting him on the first line or giving him top power play minutes and he's getting secondary assists. Like, he's creating these chances himself. He's working with guys like Kastelik and Jeannot. So to me, I think when we look back on this season, it's going to be, hey, a guy like Fraser Minten, and among others, really stepped up and became secondary pieces to this core and potentially legitimate pieces to this core down the road. No question.
So I know we had you on before and we talked about James Hagens and, where he might project, right? And obviously 7th overall pick, but I mean, in terms of Fraser Minten's ceiling, right? And seeing what we saw in the month of January, I mean, could he be a 1C for this Bruins team?
That's the thing, Adam. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, no way, like, whereas I think earlier in the year, it'd been like people would kind of bring up Bergeron and be like, stop. Okay, please stop with the Bergeron comparisons. It's unfair. And it's, but I think he's played his way into like, I'll listen. I still think he's a 2C down the road, which is awesome. There are so few legitimate 1Cs in the NHL, but he kind of has all the pieces. I was on with Carl Corzini last night, who used to play for the Bruins, current coach at St. Mark's, and he made the comp to Matty Beniers. Like, what if he's Matty Beniers? You take that every time.
Yeah.
And that's a guy, Beniers is sort of a borderline number 1 center. And I think, Minten can already jump up on the top line and play a couple of games there and fill in when a Lindholm is hurt. And I think that's fantastic. Adam, I think to your question, it's, can he do it for 82 games? Can he do it for a long time? I wouldn't be shocked. I still will play on the more conservative side of like, I think he's a very good 2C down the road. But if he became their number one center in 2030, I wouldn't be shocked. And I think you go back to, these last 3-4 months that's changed. So yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility anymore that he could end up being a 1C. And the other thing I think that's interesting is like, you draft guys like Hagens, you trade for guys like Will Zellers. These are not defensive stalwarts. These are not typical Bruins. They're high-end, high-octane offensive ceiling kind of guys. Minten is a safe bet. Minten is a good two-way forward who is going to give you probably 50, 60 points at minimum and be responsible in his own zone and play in any situation. You need a guy like that to offset your Hagenses and your Zellers and your Will Moores and even your Laternos when they come down the line. I know we're looking way far ahead here, but I do think that's an important aspect of Minten and his place on this roster.